Hi, welcome everyone to this week's podcast. This is Denny and I diving into the energies for the week from the 21st to the 27th. So, hi Denny, welcome.
Hi, Fiona. Hi, everyone.
So I'm going to start off today and I'm going to actually share my card first of all. And I pulled this card today, which is the Buffalo card from the Animal Magic deck, which is a transference healing deck of cards, which is actually a deck of cards that I've worked with for many years. And I love the energies of these cards because they're very shamanic in nature. They're very connected to the earth, and the energies that you receive and the messages that you receive from these cards are always really beautiful. So I was really drawn to work with these cards today, and it'll be interesting as we both go through our parts today as we see whether they play a part in what you're going to share with us, Denny, as well. But the buffalo seems actually really perfect in regards to supporting the energies of this week in regards to what I'm bringing through with the numerology and the message from the Akashic records as well. This card really speaks to calling in divine spirit to give you the resources you need to create and sustain a process of change. And as we know, we're going through massive changes at the moment. It shows you that you're supported to work through any situation to create a new and positive outcome for yourself. So it brings in that beautiful energy, and it brings a lot of grounding energy that connects you to nature and kind of brings revitalization to your body and nourishes your body as well. So this card really represented to me that you are really ready to kind of release unwanted emotions, painful memories, fears, phobias, and any self-imposed limitations that you're working with at the moment. It's a sign that you're becoming more open to exploring something new, something different, that invitation that we're putting out there at the moment to create something new. And I can see you smiling, Denise. So I'm sure it has a meaning with what you're going to bring through too. So this card I feel is really beautiful for everyone this week in terms of knowing and understanding that we have that support, that we're really supported at the moment to create this change that we've been seeking for so long now. So if we look at this in terms of the numerology, we're currently in week 25, which is a universal 7 week. And of course, we're in a 5-year. So the 5 energy is actually weaving its way through all of your experiences at the moment this year. And it's bringing a strong desire to create more freedom in your life. So this is all about creating more free will and choice that's available to you. I mean, we're really here to live a life that's guided by our free will and our choice. So it's connecting us, this energy at the moment, to our deep soul truth around this, that we have free will and choice to create our experience that we have in this incarnation. So this energy kind of keeps reminding you what it is that you're on your way to creating, and that is more freedom in your life. It shows you that you can't be free if you're still working with your old patterns and your old blocks and your old wounding. So that needs to be resolved to create that freedom in your life. And as that constant reminder runs through your current experience, then as you begin to embody that energy this week, you know that you're really supported in shifting some of those things that you keep, that really just keep coming up for you. And if we combine that with the 7 energy of this week itself, that's all about drawing you inwards. It's about going within yourself. It guides you to dive really more deeply within yourself, to remember, to recall, to look at your memories of your past experiences, to look at your past and really identify the key stories that are still playing out in some way in your life at this time. You're being asked to process, I think, particularly at the emotional level, the experiences that you didn't completely work through or you didn't completely process in some way, where you may have suppressed your truth emotionally, but also mentally, verbally, or even physically as well. And finally, allow yourself to heal from those. So really shift those now in your experience. And this has been a massive thing for me this week. I've had a huge realization around this, and I'm sitting in the energy of this now. Why did I not see this before? Why has that just become so clear to me this week? Because it's been something that I've been asking for so long. And, you know, the answer to that, of course, is that we are so supported in this energy at the moment to finally shift these things. So know that you are supported now to see things more clearly, and the willingness to dive into those depths and look at those things again will bring that support you need to actually clear that. So there's also a strong sense with the 7 energy this week to heal through acceptance. So this is another layer that we're being asked to look at here. And as you're guided inwards to the depths of your inner world, you're really supported through this energy to see your experiences through new eyes with a fresh perspective. And that will really help you to hold more empathy for yourself and accept yourself more easily. And we've often been guided to actually seek out self-acceptance. You know, that's kind of been like the journey we've been on for a lot of people, is to accept ourselves. And what we need to know now in this time of new consciousness is that self-acceptance is the starting point. And as we move forward, what we're moving into is a deeper level. This means that this requires of us self-love, which is a deeper state of self-acceptance. This energy is going to bring out your fears. You know, this week we're going to be addressing our fears, but remember that identifying your fears clearly really is the starting point to overcoming them. So we need to be able to know what's really sitting underneath there so that we can work through it and clear it. And once we begin to see it more clearly, and we identify what the real fears are, that's when you can start your healing process in a new way. So denying or hiding from your fears simply attracts in more experiences to help you overcome them. And we want to break that cycle. And that's what we're really being supported with this week. So if we think of that card, the beautiful buffalo card, and how you're being shown that you are fully supported now to release your old fears, it all sort of ties together now with that energy. This energy really gives you the resources to not only make new choices, but to live in the moment so that you can be truly free. So that was the numerology around this week. And then I dived in this morning to the Akashic Records just to bring through a message from the Akasha, which also tied in beautifully with this energy that we're sitting in this week. And the message was this: fear is a burden that weighs you down and holds you back. Imagine living your life without fear. Imagine how light you will feel when you lay down that load that you've been carrying for many lifetimes. Imagine yourself no longer limited by the constraints of your mind. Imagine a life led by your heart and not by your fear. Imagine the freedom of this power. You're moving into a time where there is no longer, where this is no longer available to you only in your imagination. You are anchoring this knowledge deep within you so that it can become your reality. and that was my message from the Akasha today. So a lot of really interesting energy this week. So I'm really keen to see what you're bringing in as well, Denny, today.
Oh, thank you for all of that, Fee. I mean, as you could probably see from my expression, so much of that landed both with what I want to speak to, but also for what's been happening for me over the last week as well. So many points that you raised through that, going back over some things and having that clarity all of a sudden of something that it's so obvious, and yet it seems to have been revealed this last week. That same thing happened for me. So I appreciated hearing that. I'm also interested when you speak from the Akasha, it seems to change and you almost go into a channeling. Is that correct?
Well, I channel it through earlier on and I'm recalling it at this point, but I'm also tuning back into that energy as I'm recalling it. So yeah, it might be that slightly the voice changes. I know sometimes when I'm channeling, it does do that, particularly from the Akashic Records. And it's more to do with the fact that when I'm tuning into the Akashic Records, I'm tuning into the Akashic Records of the collective consciousness, and that information comes through from a slightly different place within the Akasha than it does when I'm working in the Akasha for clients. So there's a different resonance to the way that I receive it. So it might be the resonance of how I speak it is also a little different.
Yeah, and I can really feel that collectiveness about it too when you speak. So it's kind of like speaking to a group of librarians rather than going and getting
Yes,
the book out yourself from the library, right?
it is. Yeah, I love that analogy because it feels like many voices when it comes through. It doesn't feel like one voice, but many voices speaking the same thing, which I kind of quite like.
I'd love to dive further into the whole Akasha and
Mm.
what that is for you and how you could describe that. We must do that in a future.
Yes, maybe that's a future conversation.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, I'm just avoiding going into what I need to say because for no other reason other than it's going to come from a really intuitive place as opposed to a looking at all the dates and what's going on. I mean, I've got a little bit of a list, but it was really feeling to me that I didn't and shouldn't prepare too much, and that it should just come from that intuitive place. So the card I got, which I think is just so perfect, number one, with us sitting in the first day of Cancer today. So the sun has moved into Cancer, which is the realm of home and family and emotion. And I picked the Mother from the deck that I use, which seems also to sit so beautifully with the Buffalo card. As you were speaking about the Buffalo card, it strikes me that my mother has passed. So there's this beautiful supportive energy that I'm feeling from the other side. But also the Mother speaks to me of the place that we're sitting in right now with regards to the earth on a larger level. But also the Mother and Cancer is that place of home and family. And the thing I'm getting is about revisiting. It just so happens this month that I'm revisiting my family, but I think that it doesn't need to be a physical revisiting. I think we've been asked to revisit the way that home and family place when we were young. It's probably no matter how different or how much you grow or how much you transform, when you go back to that space of home and family, that's where a lot of things can resurface, and a lot of ways that you were can resurface, because I think home and family see you the way you always were rather than who you've transformed into. I mean, that might be a little bit emphasized with me because I don't see my family a lot and I haven't lived at home for a very long time. But that's certainly what's been coming up for me, because I think I've changed direction in life a fair amount. And so when I think of my family, I think of judgments, and not that they put judgments onto me, but maybe just judgments that come up, judgments of who I am now, judgments of how I'm expressing the way I am in the world. And so I think this is something that this week is going to come up, or there'll be parts of you and where you may be sitting now. And I guess that fear of being judged in a certain way for being who you are, and it can be a self-judgment of, and it's not even judgment. I think it's just discomfort over who you are and how you may be seen and taken in the world, which is quite an unusual place for me to sit, because I am a pretty confident person in myself. But I've noticed that that's been coming up for me around this trip back home. And that's definitely where we're heading into the realm of in Cancer. It also is this watery realm of feeling rather than thinking. So while things are coming up, I think to sit in it in an emotional way, allow your emotions to come up around it, rather than try and think your way through it, is probably what we're moving into in the next month, but definitely in this next week. So that some questions around that is, who were you back then when you were a child? How were you seen? And how did you try and fit in? And maybe what were some of the things that you loved that you gave away because of how it maybe looked, or maybe messages that you received back then? I know I'm hugely diving more into my painting at the moment. And that was something that I stopped way back then when I was younger and at home. And that was a lot around, silly messages I had going on in my head. But funnily enough, I've noticed that I've fallen back into those messages without even knowing it. They like snuck back in. And it was, I made excuses over excuses over excuses of why I wasn't getting into my regular painting practice, and why I was pushing it aside to maybe teach more. Then I realized it's that sneaky place of, I'm avoiding that because of the same old messages. So that was that place that came up as well, Fee, for me, around some really old patternings that are still there, that sneak back in. Now that I'm aware of it, I can start working with it. And that's also that place of what this question comes up for me is, what would you do if no one was watching and you didn't care about making money? What are those dreams that you've got of following, or the passions in you, that if you didn't have the rest of the world, the constraints of the structures and the patriarchy to toe the line and do things right, what are those things that you'd just do because they lit you up, because they were joyful? I was thinking about that today, because it's funny with my painting practice. It's one of those things that I know how much joy I get out of it, and yet I avoid it. When I'm exercising, my whole body changes. I love it, and yet I avoid it. And then I look at my partner, Ricky. He's a surfer. He loves surfing, but he doesn't struggle to go and surf. It's just something he'll do. And he'll do it even in winter in the cold. And I wonder whether it was a feminine thing, and I'll say feminine rather than female, but a feminine thing to struggle to do the things that bring us joy. Maybe because we put other things in front of them. We create other priorities that come first, because I think the feminine tends to put themselves second rather than first. So I'm wondering if, sitting here looking at the mother, and the card is number 1. My mother was such a creative being, but she didn't start painting again until my father had passed away. And that brought her so much joy. And that was because she gave so much to her family. She put that all first. That just feels like such a huge message for us right now. Put yourself first, put your dreams first. What is it that brings you joy that you could be doing right now? And without questioning whether, oh, but I need to be putting my time into making money, or I need to be putting my time into my family. How about just following joy? And putting yourself first. That feels like a really big message. Just to kind of give, I always struggle with how much to give in terms of astrology. When I was young, astrology to me was horoscopes that you'd read in magazines. And I think a lot of people still see them that way. But then the other side of just like, I could go into where all the planets are and what's in retrograde. And I don't know whether that gives any, whether I just speak to what's the energy is of that rather than the actual movements. I would love to hear from anyone out there listening, whether you get anything out of me speaking to what's going on rather than just what that will bring up. But just a few things I will just go through anyway. So the sun is entering Cancer today, and today is the solstice. And I'm going to say this, it's the 20th, 21st, depending on where you are sitting on the planet at the moment. The 23rd, Mercury goes direct. Yay. It's because probably that place that we all sit. I mean, it's beautiful. I shouldn't say yay, but I do, I've got a very strong Mercury. So I really feel that the retrogradeness of Mercury in a really personal way. I find it a lot harder to find my words and to communicate, and to it's a much more internal communication that happens with me, so it makes these podcasts a little bit difficult. But when planets go direct, so when they go retrograde, they slow down almost to a stop, and then they speed back up again. So it's in that place of going forwards, but it's still in a slow space. It'll start picking up pace. So everything could stop. There might be like a reset on what you need to say happening at the moment. On the 24th, we've got Venus sitting opposite Pluto. So Venus is that planet of love, of what we value, of beauty, of joy. And she's sitting opposite Pluto. Pluto is the planet of the underworld. And this really speaks to this, another thing I've been feeling into. Fee, I watched our very first YouTube video that we did, and it was when we were liminality. And that just popped up on my screen the other day out of nowhere. And I have really been feeling this liminal space in what we've been sitting in at the moment. Just that place of the unknown. It's almost like everything's really foggy and nothing is clear. Almost like a dream state I'm feeling at the moment. So there's lots of possibilities in that dream state, those places of finding your joy. But at the same time, it may feel just like nothing is clear, but sit where you are and just feel all the things around what brings you joy and what you may be coming up from, an old part of your life, and sit in the unknown of that space of the unknown, rather than needing to move through it. I think with Venus opposite Pluto, a lot of that theming is coming around those two planets. On the 26th, Neptune goes retrograde. And again, that's kind of speaking of the same thing. Neptune is that planet of the mystical, the other world. Kind of going retrograde speaks to me of going into that liminal space. And when Neptune goes retrograde, we've got all of the biggies retrograde. We've got Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto. So we're in a real time of retrospection, looking back, looking at new ways of doing things. And we still have that Saturn-Uranus square. They're starting to move, but it's like they're still sitting like within 2 degrees of each other. And where I'm really feeling this at the moment is around Saturn being the patriarchy, Saturn being the way we've always done things. He can be reframed into so many different ways, and I always try and bring balance to them, but it doesn't feel balanced right now. It feels like the way things have always been, sitting in that patriarchy way. We're really being asked to do things in new and innovative ways, which is this Uranus really starting to speed up and bring a lot more light. This came to me, Fee. I did a post around a program that I watched called Breaking Boundaries. And I'm going to speak to that here because I'm really passionate about it. And it feels relevant to going into Cancer and the mother and home. It's a David Attenborough documentary around where the planet sits at the moment. And he has a scientist on there called Johan Rockström. And they go into where we are in all different places of the planet and where we've tipped over or we're close to tipping over a no going back zone. And it's very confronting, and I don't actually want to sugarcoat it because I think that the confronting nature of it speaks to where we are right now. So I'd really, particularly anyone who wants the science of it, to go and listen and watch on Netflix, that Breaking Boundaries. I also listened to a podcast of Marianne Williamson. She's an amazing author, has been around for a very long time. And she was interviewing Deepak Chopra, who I love him because he sits in this beautifully, he's such an intelligent man. He's very spiritual, but he also is, he backs it all up with the science. And they spoke in a much more of a, I guess, in a spiritual way, but not really. But if that's kind of where you want to hear about where the planet's heading at the moment, I think it's a really beautiful interview to also listen to. Again, it's quite confronting when they speak about where we're at and where they see us going. But it's where we are. It's kind of the reality. And I think that we're still in a place of being able to make some big changes to change the future outcome of humanity on this planet. It's big, but I can't not this week not bring that out because it's just so sitting in my heart right now. It's so emotional, and we're going into Cancer. It's such an emotional thing. I can really feel so much anger going on at the powers, the structure, and how they can still continue to want to mine our waters and mine our land. And it's heartbreaking. So I'm just going to use this time to also, it feels a very relevant time to bring that up. So I think that's me in terms of everything that's been coming up. There's a lot going on for me personally too, which you can probably feel. And it's another big week. And I think we've got another big month ahead. There you go, Fee.
Woohoo. Well, I love those reflections, and thank you for sharing those. There's particularly that piece around the patriarchy that Saturn's bringing in there, and how we've always done things, because there's so much of that shifting in the collective at the moment. There's so much that's moving and shifting that we're not actually aware of consciously yet. It hasn't come into our physical experience yet, but energetically it's starting to shift, and it's bringing up a lot of questions around how we used to do things, and changing things and moving forward into a new direction. And of course, with that, there's a lot of resistance from certain people, particularly people that hold a lot of power around the old way that things are done. And then there's this, you know, almost like this surge of people that are coming in and wanting to do it differently. So even within the collective at the moment, there feels like there's this inner conflict between this, it's almost like this little struggle of pulling people into a new way of thinking and feeling and acting so that we can shift the world. And yes, that feels really hard. And particularly those are some of the influences that are going to be at play for everyone. It's going to trigger those responses in people. So as you're doing now, they dive into that for themselves so that they can start to make new choices, to become more aware, to take action, and also to know that not every battle is your battle, but there are things that you will feel drawn to be, you know, to speak out against, to take action on, and actually work with those as well. So it's a massive time around the collective. And if people are feeling overwhelmed at the moment, it might not be your own personal stuff, although there's always a lot going on at the personal level, but there's so much shifting at the collective level as well, that you might be sensing that more, particularly as we go through our own self or inner healing journey through that I am piece. And we're starting now to move more consciously into the we are piece. So therefore we are becoming more connected or more sensitive to the collective energies around us.
It's exactly what I was thinking of, Fee, is that I am to we are. And as we are moving more into this Aquarian age, Aquarius is about the collective becoming one. And it's actually what Deepak Chopra speaks to, is this collective mind. And doing things differently. I wonder if it's just everyone that is that is aware of what's going on the planet, that, you know, isn't still in the money equals power mindset, whether it's just that kind of like that linking of belief systems, rather than we need to go all out and march together, but just a absolute understanding that we can all think differently about what we value. And I mean, I think everyone has got to agree that at the base of everything underneath our feet is a planet. And without that planet, what do we have? It gives us everything.
Yeah, I love that. And it's, yes, I mean, there's so much in that. I think this could be a conversation that goes on for ages, but there's so much in that around, you know, we don't always shift things at the physical level. There's so much that we shift at the energetic level. And as we work within ourselves, so that I am peace, as we heal ourselves, we actually heal at a collective level as well. So those belief systems, as we shift and change our own belief systems, that's going into the collective energy. So as we more and more of us move into that different way of seeing or viewing where we want to go, and are starting to create that for ourselves, we're shifting the collective along with that, which is where that, I think, that inner battle in the collective is happening at the moment. So yeah, there's so much we can do just by focusing on ourselves. There's so much that we can do to actually heal within the collective as well. Or maybe that's a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, healing within ourselves, but also healing our relationship to the earth and the way that we do things on a personal day-to-day level. I'm sitting in this place of changing cars at the moment, and oh man, I would love to not have to have a car. My kids, you know, I have kids, and you know, when they're with their dad, they're far enough away for me to need a car for them. And if I could, that would be such a beautiful place to start. And so, okay, where else can I make those decisions? And I think we spoke last time of the food piece, and going to your farmers markets rather than buying from the big stores. You know, when you're buying your clothes, instead of going to those big companies that just, you know, get cheap labor from countries and don't pay enough, you know, looking at local suppliers, or not buying anything at all. You know, I'm huge about minimalism and
Yeah,
and the value we place on things rather than time.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's a lot this week to consider and to work through. So I hope everyone has a great week ahead, and we look forward to connecting with you next week.
Next week for July.